So today I want to show you box modeling in Blender 2.8. I know I have a tutorial that's in Maya box modeling, but I wanted to show the process in Blender, some tools and features that I like about Blender 2.8 as opposed to the way it works in Maya. And I'm going to box model a bat because a friend of mine was starting to try to box model a bat, and I wanted to sort of cover. I think it's got a lot of interesting things that'll make it sort of an interesting object to model. So let's get to it. I'm going to take and use this image as a reference to start with, and then we'll probably check out some of the wingspan pictures to kind of get an idea for the arms. But for now, let's just look at this. We're going to start with the head. So in Blender 2.8, you start with a box. If you're not familiar, if you haven't modeled a lot in Blender, you model the object by going into edit mode, just picking a box or a sphere or whatever. We're going to start with a box. The other thing that you can do is you can create these using this little tool with the monkey wrench. That's the context modifiers, and you can add a whole bunch of modifiers here. So what we're going to do first, though, before we add those, is go into edit mode, and we're going to insert some subdivisions on this cube. So one down the center line, because we're going to delete half of it so we can do half the work. And then probably one on the center, and then one back here. So basically we're just subdividing everything. Go back to object mode. Well, actually, let's go to edit mode. And we will select by face. Here are your attribute or your object type selectors. So we have vertices, line, and faces. We'll select by face. Make sure you go back to the arrow key or the arrow tool. Select your faces and delete. We're going to delete the faces. So now we have this half-empty box or half-sided box. Go to object mode. Under modifiers, we're going to add a mirror modifier, which is set to mirror across the X. That way we can just model across one side. The other thing that we can add is a either a subdivision surface or a multi-resolution modifier. If we do a subdivision surface with one subdivision ratio, we can actually go in to edit mode and make modifications to the original object, like this, and it will change the subdivision so we can see what we're doing. I don't want to model that way right now because sometimes it can get in the way. But another way of doing this, we will add, instead of the subdivision, we're going to add the multi-resolution, which is pretty much the same thing as a subdivision, except it also allows you to create multiple levels of resolution on the object. And well, the subdivision does as well. The multi-res is sort of the new version of subdivision. The thing that it doesn't do at this point, though, is allow you to see or modify the box model, the original shape, while in edit mode. So if we go and we add a subdivision, we get the exact same thing, but when we come back to edit mode, it snaps back to the box shape. And what I want to do is I want to model this box shape as we go in order to in its box form, so that we get the shape right, because sometimes when you model with the subdivision turned on, you end up having to kind of model extremes, and I think this will probably work better. So we'll get started with this with all of this setup, the multi-res modifier and the mirror modifier going. What we have is this subdivided box. We're going to make this the head. Oh, we also want to, let's go back to object mode. We're going to import an image for reference, so I don't have to go back and forth between the browser. In order to do that, go to preferences. And I don't have this turned on all the time because I don't always want to be able to import images, planes as images. But if you go to this add-ons, these are all the plugins that you can add to Blender. And there are a lot. And there's even marketplaces for being able to buy more powerful tools. The one that we're looking for is built in, though, so it's called, if you just look by image, and then it's import images as planes. I have it turned on right now, so just check that if it's not checked. And then what you can do is under File, Import, Image as Planes, And we will select, we need to go to the right place. Just find the image that you want to use as a choice. So I've got this VBAT, import. Oh, it's inside the model. So it's not going to show up rendered because we are in just flat shaded mode. If you turn on shading, you'll see the bat. I want to put it back here on the Z so that we can model it in the direction that we want to mirror across, which in this case is along the x-axis here. So what we want to do is go E to rotate, and if you hold down Control, if you first select the rotation and then hold down Control, you'll get these little incremental snaps, which will help you snap it to the axis. So right now we're at 85, there's 90. Then scale it up, not too big. And then just move it back on the plane so it's in the background. We're just going to use that as a reference. All right, so make it a little bigger. Okay. Now when we go to edit mode, not that object's edit mode, but select the original cube, go to edit mode. We'll get our box model back, and what we want to do is probably think about how to extrude this thing out. So we're going to extrude the mouth and the snout first. I'm going to treat, let me think. Yeah, so this will end up being kind of the forehead. So let's go ahead and extrude that up. And to extrude, you just select this extrude region and then pull it up. We'll talk about one of the things that's doing is it's creating an internal face where we've deleted the other faces now. So if for example, I move this apart, you see how they're separate? We can fix that in a minute. But anyway, that's the forehead. Now we want to extrude back for the neck. And also where the ears will be. And probably for now, let's leave it at that. Let's take our line tool or select by lines. Make sure you get off of the extrusion mode. But what I mean when I say that is just select the arrow or one of these movement keys, and I'm going to pinch at the nose for now. We will pull this a little down and up. This can come back, the forehead, down and back. And probably we can select these faces, pull those out a little bit. So we end up getting this kind of pinched shape. Now, the reason that I chose to do this extrude out and extrude up kind of thing is because we want this ring right here around the mouth and the jaw in order to be able to add detail. So in order to add that detail, if you just click this loop cut, you can go and insert a line there. And probably, I'm just thinking about how to split this thing now, the mouth. Looking at the ears, the way they wrap around the eye. So the eye will end up being like a point that comes in here in a second. Let's go ahead and extrude one more line back on the back of the head. Then I'm going to make or insert a line for the ears just to make it a little bit easier to create the shape. Yeah, probably that'll work. Then we can pull these lines back. So we start to create that curve shape. We don't have a side view of the head, but you can see where it sort of wraps around and comes under the eye on the earlobe. On top of that, we can probably pull these points back. Yeah. probably we don't want to, we're going to extrude this ear out from these three faces. We don't want to run it all the way to the corner, so we can insert a line across the top like that, and then just select those faces, these three. Yeah, that's probably, let me think, do I want to go down to here? If you look at the jaw, it's like the ear kind of becomes the jaw, so we probably could. I think I will for now. Let's see what happens. Just, instead of doing this extrude out, because we've got multiple planes selected, hold down and do extrude along normals, so that you get this point that way. And it just extrudes every face along its normal. Then we can go and pull some more points just to get the shape. Probably these can come in this way. And the same thing on the bottom. So what I'm doing, you can kind of see, is just getting a rough boxy shape going, because this will all round out later. Let's pull that up. We can probably pinch the ear a lot more, like that. You can go and do the same thing with points here. Now you have to start thinking about how to create these points on the ears. I could just pull this point up like this, but I think I want to make it and just extrude a face off of it. Probably too, we can start to think about how the eye sort of kind of sinks in to the head a little bit, and how the nose comes up to a point, or snout, I should say. Yeah, it's starting to look pretty good. So then what we can do is we select again by face. We can extrude this up. Select the points. Whoops. That's where I said, like, don't keep the same tool selected. If you only want to do it once, just make sure you swap back. So now we're starting to get the rough ear shape going. We can curl the ear a little bit forward. And we're going to leave that for now. Let's see, pull this down and in. Alright, so now it starts to get interesting. Like, how do we want to connect? We have this like fold that comes forward and creates kind of a cavity on the ear. So we could insert an entire loop across the nose like that, or we could start to think about how to retopologize this ear part. So one of the things we can do is we could use this line cut tool, this knife. If you do that, let's go ahead and try it. Turn on snapping with this magnet tool, and then select the point that you want to snap to. So we want to snap to edges or vertex. Probably vertex is good. So we can basically draw it, and when you see it, so it'll automatically snap and then start to draw another line. You can just let off and hit enter. So now we've got that point. Same thing to this edge. Hit enter. And then from here to there, hit enter. What I'm trying to do is avoid triangles like this little triangle point here. But what we can do is run this point up and then over. In fact, we might even run it up like that. Yeah, that'll look better. And it actually ends up finishing out the this stays a quad instead of a triangle. We'll delete this edge in a second. And then we can just bring it back down. Notice that it automatically just snaps to the line and then wants to jump to the point and hit enter. Whoops. You have to click to finish it. There we go. So now we can take and select the lines using the line selection right here. If you right click, you can dissolve edges down here at the bottom. And basically that'll just lose the edge there so that we keep it quads. And the main reason for keeping it quads is so that when we do the subdivision, we don't end up with some weird pinches in the geometry. I'll show you what I mean in a sec. Whoops. Dissolve edges. So now we've got the ear shape, the back of the head. This can probably be less boxy if we select this point. Oops, got point snapping turned on still, so turn that off just by clicking on the magnet. And pinch the head that way. That looks pretty good. Probably we can select all. Oh, one of the things if you actually end up working with the multi-res, or more particularly if you're working in this mode and you have the subdivision surface turned on so that you actually see the subdivision, as in this, once it's smooth, you will pull these points in the cage when you're doing the edit mode and you won't be able to see them. So for example, let me turn this off. I'll just show you what I'm talking about. Not the mirror. Actually, let me fix what I'm talking about, because you can see where we've gone and done all this extrusion. We've created some internal faces so that when we're in that edit mode, you can see where it's just the points won't connect because there's a face there blocking it. So to fix that, if you go to edit mode, turn off your mirror, and by turn off I mean just turn off the display, don't delete the function. This little tool right here, it's like edit mode, display modifier, and edit mode, so you can just turn that off or just toggle it, and then select the faces, these interior faces, and then delete those. So again, we're back to the hollow interior. We go back to edit mode now. The thing is perfect. It's you don't get those blocking edges, so it's flat or smooth. So in edit mode, what I meant by, let me turn off the multi-res. Actually, instead of turning it off, I just have to delete it, so we don't really need it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and add the, I deleted the multi-res just by clicking on the X. I'll add the subdivision surface instead, which you'll see. So now that we're in edit mode, you can see where there's a cage and you get the subdivision surface on top, but you can see that that cage at point disappears. So if we're selecting by points, you can click those and move them around, but they're hard to see. To fix that, you can turn on X-ray mode, which is this little tool right up at the top right here. What did I do? Deleted. No, I got multi-res back, so let me go back and add the subdivision because I was undoing the drawing. So if you turn that on, now you can see the cage and the mesh behind it, which is sometimes useful for editing. Okay. So, and if you just want to, and if you want to toggle back and forth between the box modeling and this view, you can, again, just turn off that viewpoint, and you'll be able to see the mesh. So, like the X-ray is nice, and sometimes it can get in the way when you see back-facing things, but it's also useful if you want to select entire sections through, so it'll select through everything. Whereas if you turn that off and you just select like this, it only selects the front faces. So, something to think about. So anyway, let's see if we can finish this quickly. Pull that. One of the things, because of the way the ear connects, is I'll probably want to extrude. Trying to think. probably want to extrude these faces forward or up like this to create that fold. Do I want this to probably or another way to do it is I could extrude this face in and create the hollow. Let's do that instead. We'll call this the, move that forward, make that the fold, and then select these faces and extrude those in, or even inset them. So if you just select the inset mode and then pull that in and hit W, you get that geometry. And the flip and the fold of the ear that way, so it kind of insets. It's probably the better way to do it. I mean, it inserts a lot of geometry that way versus pulling this fold out, but the ear probably needs it. So the other thing we can do is we can pull this back with the lines, and this one can come forward. Let's do it by point. I'm just figuring out how to lay out this geometry in the best way. These could come much further back in. Probably down some too. I'm trying to spread it out. This works good because then we can pull that in like it's starting to go into the head, and then this can fold. Let me see. So his eye, this will end up being his eye cavity then, and we're going to pull that. So what we can do to create that is we'll just do an extrusion off of this face too. Yeah, that'll work good. Let's pull these forward. So probably coming down to the lower jaw like that, this section right here is not the best. So what we can do to fix that, it's interesting because we don't have the same amount of geometry on the back of the ear now as we did on the front. So what we can do is, let me think about how to fix it. Probably insert a line, an edge here, actually from here to there. Should you come to that point? No. Hit enter. That way we have the same amount of geometry, and then we can start to delete these faces and fix it. So select. We want that, I think. Just delete those. And then what you can do is select the edges and you can bridge them. So this to this, those two edges. And then under this little menu here, so these give you some of the tools. You get more for each option, so each selection option. So for edge, and there's this bridge edge loops, which will bridge that. And then the same thing, it's got an interior point there too. Trying to think how to run this. I don't know if you need it off on the back. Although I think yeah, so you could run this around. So point to, let's go ahead and run it up across the back. We'll select our knife, click, and just drag up to like there, let's say, enter. We'll fix it in a second. And then I'm thinking we can fix this part of the ear. So if we go, let's turn on snapping. I'm drawing it by line, but I want to draw at the point. Go to there, click, and then to there, and then across, enter, and then just click from this point to somewhere in the center like that. So we get the quad back. Oops, got to turn off snapping. It's a little too much detail there, but it's a start. And what we can do, it's actually, let me think. So we'll come across from here using the knife tool. Hit enter, and then maybe join that. The easiest thing to do is join to that, enter, and then we'll figure out this relationship here. Alright, so now we got to figure out the eye. Let's go with the face. Extrude, we're going to inset. If I can get it to shift. Undo. There we go. We'll pull that in a little bit. It's probably pretty good. Oops. So now we got to think about this forehead. I'm going to turn off the see-through mode because I don't really need it. All right, let's start thinking about the nose. And this, we'll also have to do the mouth. So the mouth is probably going to come in here. Let's see. Thinking. Yeah, let's do this. Select this face, and this face. And we're going to make the mouth out of that. So, extrude inside. So you see what we did there. It's a little weird looking for now, but we want to delete this face. And we'll pull the points or get them set up so now we can actually add more detail. So this will be his lips. Pull it up. Lower lip, I should say. And then this will be the, go ahead and pull this down. Sort of a chin. See it start to take shape here in a second. Just need to pull that back, and these can come forward a little bit. Probably down just a smidge. And then what we can do is just extrude this further back now. So if we take, select these faces, yeah, and then extrude again. Take it back straight now. Now this is probably throwing off the alignment on the z-axis. We'll see in a second. But if it does, it's not that big of a deal. So we'll delete this face. We can turn mirroring back on so we can see across what we're getting. And we'll start to fix these points. So that's These can go up. It doesn't look like it messed up the mirror. So what we'll do is we'll insert some edge rings here. Once we get everything pulled back into its proper place, I'm going to turn mirroring back off so I can do this from the inside. See how it should align. Because like these and these should just go back like that. And then this one. So you actually get the shape of the mouth starting to happen. Sort of. So we also have to insert some more points. So to do that, we can hit the loop cut. See where it runs along the snout that way. Or we could try it across the inside like that. That's why I pulled it back. I wanted to create that kind of interior detail point where I could start to create the shape with lips and stuff. So pull this up and this one. think it is. All right. Let me think. Object mode. Yeah. So what you can see is when you have it in the subdivision turned on, the snapping of the center line, you'll see a contiguous surface, whereas if it's pulled apart, you'll see a hard edge loop line. Now I want to take a look at adding the body. This is probably a good place to do it. The tongue could probably be thinned down a little bit before we do that, so let's do that real quick, or we can come back to it later. Let's see. Oops, I forgot to select the head. So one thing you need to understand is, like, when you go into edit mode, you're in edit mode on that object. So if I do it on this picture, I'm just going to have that object selected. If I want to edit the head, I have to go into selecting the head. Well, we also want to do this nose part too, I think. So anyway, the thin, if you look at the tongue, you can barely tell, but it's pretty thin. So I'm going to go and edit this real quickly, just to thin it out. That'll work for now. Then we want to fix this nose part, so we'll turn the mirror on and think about how to create this little extra nostril fold. Maybe the idea is to pull this back in, the entire thing, or do an inset like this. Instead of a sculpt, we'll just do an inset and then pull that back. Probably we're going to want to delete this face in the center and pull the points to the center so it connects back up. So let's do that. And then all you have to do to make the connection back is go into point or vertice edit mode and pull them until they connect. And you're not going to see that because we're using the, we've got the subdivision in the edit mode turned off. If you just turn that back on, sometimes it pays to work on the subdivision. You'll see where the geometry suddenly snaps. And we'll want to turn on the X-ray as well. So it looks like this. Which one am I editing? Yeah, there we go. So that can come in like that. And then we just have this hole. Or do we? Actually, that can come down some like this. Let me turn off the subdivision just to see what I'm looking at now. Yeah. So probably this. It looks like it has a center ring, so yeah, that's good. Alright, so I think that'll work. Let's extrude it. Now remember, because we're doing this inner ring here, we're going to be inserting some faces that we'll have to delete, but for now we can deal with that. let's turn off the mirror. We'll actually just delete them. Select this face that got created internally and delete the face, and then come back and turn on the mirror. So now you see where we've pulled it out and we have that gap. And we'll do the same thing, just pull the points until we see the snapping. So turn on our subdivision. There we go. And then one more up here. You can just see where it joins up on the subdivision. Then we'll turn this off so we know they're in the right spot. And figure out how to create this. So it looks like what's going on in the picture. So he has this little fringe or ridge down the middle and this. So we can pull this up, pull these back. Oops, still have the snap turned on. Probably even pull these up some, since we can use this extra extrusion part here to pull that back, and then maybe up. This part can come in. This, yeah, that'll kind of want to create this flare and pull these back now. Up, over. Okay. Nah. Let's see. Yeah, it's starting to look pretty good. It's going to at least give us enough detail to work with later, I think. We could probably insert some more here, but for now, I think that's enough. Maybe pull this part back. These can come up more. Maybe get closer. And the same thing here. It seems pretty good. Looks like the lip kind of caves in a little bit here. Like that. Yeah, it looks good. All right, so probably this can come up a little bit, and then that's good. All right, now we have the nose. Let's work on pulling out the body, but in order to do that, we want to reference so we can see the body from the side, or at least see the anatomy so that we know what we're doing. Now if we go and we want to draw out the body, select our head, edit, figure out where the neck comes from, and you can sort of see the neck goes straight into the forehead, and the same thing, so there really isn't much of a neck, so you can almost use every face we have here like this. If we hit F when we have something selected like this, it'll center that so that when we do our rotation, it's centered on that plane. That's kind of what we want in this case. So yeah, I think we'll just extrude from that. So select your extrude region, pull it out. Now again, that's going to separate because of the angle that we're pulling it out, but that's all right. We can just hit W, but before we do that, let's delete these faces. And in fact, we could probably rotate this. Hit E, rotate like that. Let's do thinking I'll just pull them out of this section here, and that'll account for these. It'll tie off these points pretty well. And yeah, let's do that. So we're going to make the legs, select these faces, then extrude. Actually, instead of extruding, we'll do our inset. Just pull it out a little bit. Something like that. And we can pull these points. Now that we have that extra geometry, we can pull these points to further up. One of the things I always struggle with when I'm doing this kind of modeling is adding too much detail in the base mesh, because you're going to get, once you end up doing sculpting, you're going to end up getting a lot of polygons because of the way subdivision surfaces work. And you basically just want to put the detail where it counts, where it matters, with the geometry. And also, too, if you can, you want to kind of go for squarish polygons, not rectangular ones, just as a kind of guideline. Because it's a lot harder to UV map kind of a rectangular, like it's easier to get a good distribution on your UV map when it's relatively squarish polygons, as opposed to these like long rectangular ones here. On top of that, these long rectangular ones mean that there's probably going to be less flexibility here. When you have a square polygon, it's easier for it to flex if you animate it. So we'll end up adding some detail here for the wings, I'm thinking. But for now, it's starting to look pretty good. Probably pulled this to round the leg more. Got a lot of geometry coming in here, which is okay because at the end this has to become the toes, and there's obviously going to be a lot of geometry in the toes, but this is sort of extreme in what's going on here. So I'm thinking if I want to introduce a triangle there yet. Although I could go to here and then insert another triangle. Yeah, let's do that. So we're going to do a little topologizing here. So we're going to go turn on our magnet, click here to here, and that creates a triangle. actually nix that a sec. Undo. We're going to delete this edge, or select the edge and then dissolve it. Then come from here to here with a cut to the center line. Hit enter. And that leaves this little dangling poly here, but then we can cut to create a new quad and do the exact same thing. And that gave us just a little bit more geometry on the leg, which is always good. Like I said, we're going to end up turning that geometry into, let's turn off our snaps. We're going to turn that geometry into toes at some point anyway, so just trying to pinch this into the tail and hips. Yeah, that looks good. Could probably do the same thing up here. Let's do that. We'll get a nice wrap loop that way. So let's get rid of this one. Dissolve. Go to your cut and turn on snapping with points. That way I can pull that up later, and then just do again this little snap to point there and there. So we added some extra geometry in our leg without necessarily creating any triangles, which is nice. And we can pull that point up, so it's not so extreme. Oops, got to turn off my point snapping again. And then this can come up. Now we have a nice round number of polygons to extrude our legs with. So what we'll do to start that process is select these faces. Do an inset first, just to create an extra edge loop. Like that. Pull it out. Okay, and then we can do a longer extrude. Go ahead and hit scale. I want to flatten that into like a plane, a straighter ring, let's say. And also fix the, scale it down a little bit, because the legs taper a lot and they're really thin bones. That's a good start. We can do another edge loop here. going to leave the tail for now. I'll look for better references, but let's go ahead and do the toes. So how do we go and create 5 toes from the topology that we have? First, let's focus on this. Turn off our reference, and our X-ray. So basically, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we need a 5th. So the 5th can come off at an angle from one of these. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. So then, which angle though? So that picture, which way was the foot faced? And where was that picture? Here. Inside. So if it's facing back, it'll be coming off to the side. So yeah, off to the side, which means here. So wait, if he's flying, yeah, because they kind of they point towards each other when it's flared out like that. So and back. Looking at this. So yeah, what we can do is we'll twist this, turn our X-ray back on so I can select all the points, rotate, twist to kind of get an angle on it. Like that. Then this will become our 5th toe right here. Let me think. No, actually this. And then we'll have these. So just do an extrude off. Excuse me. Pull out. We'll rotate it into position. We'll figure out a way to clear that up in a minute. We can flatten this. Get the points straightened out. So we want, again, squarish toes. This will be the bottom of the foot. This will be the top. And then each one of these will represent a toe. Probably this can come back, and that can be back. And what we'll do is we'll extrude individual toes out of each one of these. So we'll do it 1, 2, 3, 4, and extrude it this way or that way. Probably 5. We'll make this like the edge of a joint. So this can come up, going out. I'm just spreading out the toes now. Narrow this one. And then we can fix these points. Making this like the pad of the foot. Okay. Oops. So now we want to get these leveled and then extrude them, or pull them out to the length of the finger, and then we'll just split the joints out from them. So if he's got long toes, have to look again at the reference. Yeah, they're pretty long, but not that long. So it's 1, 2, it looks like they're each 2-ish digits with a claw. So that's pretty good, actually, those lengths. Then we can just insert an edge loop. We'll spread them out. I'm just going to double click and select these edge loops to spread them out even more. You're not going to be able to do it on the ends. What we can do though is we'll they seem to, the toes get big at the end in order to accommodate the claw. So we're going to make them flare at the ends. And we'll insert a loop that way. So let me square this toe up. Move it out and make it bigger. I'm just trying to get these to shape kind of square. In this case we're doing squares instead of rounded edges because they'll end up becoming round once we subdivide. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to put a little bit of a bend in the toes. Trying to select my point. By bend, I just mean so that it looks like it's at an angle. So it's like kind of grasping. This angle is weird, as well as the yeah, this one too. Alright, so then take these faces, just gonna rotate, pull them back, make them bigger. What I mean when I say I'm going to rotate them is I just get to the side of them and then just use this white rotation tool to kind of get them oriented the way I want. And I can scale them bigger. Oops, wrong one. That. Ooh, this thing got skewed really bad. Same here. All right. Probably, let me select this face and spread it. You can clean it up a lot more later too, but so what's going on here is that these come from almost nothing. There's no, they're too tight, I guess. So I'm trying to figure out the right way to spread it. I'm going to pull the foot back so it looks like it's more long, because it kind of have this is the palm then, these are the fingers. Let me select this face. This one's just a little bit of an odd angle. Like that. Now what I'm going to do on each one of these fingers is an inset. May not do it on multiples at the same time. Let's just do each one. So we're going to go inset and then pull it out. Scale it. Just to create like the roundness of the finger. Same thing here. And this will also give us the ability to pull a claw off of it. Insets. Inset's kind of an underestimated tool for being able to do some retopology. Because if you noticed, I've used it several times to try to fix topological issues. Pull off. Flatten this. I'm gonna flatten this one too. Inset it. Pull it off. And then the last one, I'm going to scale this one a little bit wide or narrow. Probably rotate it some. And scale it. And then I'll do an inset. Scale that in. Take a look at it. So now this joint looks a little weird. Oops, I'm scaling. I want to rotate it. This looks very weird. That can come out. It's looking pretty good. Now the question is, do you want these joints to have more detail so you can actually put bones on them and curve the fingers to grasp, like hang upside down, things like that? If so, you want to go ahead and insert some edge loops here. One of the things we could do to fix this, make it better, is go ahead and do insert edge loops at these points and just pull them down and scale them in. Oops. You want to do like a full scale to make them smaller. The question is, what's the scale angle that you're doing it at? There we go. Maybe pull them out a little bit. And even make some joint, like some widening of the joint at the but the idea is to spread this joint out so that there's a gap and it looks more like a digit, but also it'll allow it to flex better, because if you tried to bone or rig this with the way this works here, flexing this entire thing would be problematic. Probably we could even like insert an edge loop around this entire thing and then connect it up to this point to give some more detail to the hand. So let's do that. Notice how it lines up and then goes off there. So what we can do is just grab these points, pull them back. Something like that. That way the palm can grasp too. In fact, we can probably start to make it look a little bit more like a palm. Flatten it out. I'm going to want a joint here sure. And it might be that that goes skinny to make it look, yeah. Starting to look pretty good. I accidentally dedocked my app. Now, yeah, that's looking good. So let's go back and insert these joints at the knuckles. I'm thinking instead of doing 3 at the fingers, 2 is probably enough for now since it's a low poly. So we're going to just make it like this. Whoops. For now. We'll fix these at the big knuckle. And pull them apart. So, scale. Alright. It's when you accidentally get the scale. So yeah, I'm scaling it in the wrong direction. That'll work. And I'm just grabbing this little green square to scale it on the plane of the axis. Yeah, this one's off. Sometimes you can't avoid having to edit by hand. I'm just trying to scale. Let's see. Looking pretty good. Let's look at it in object mode with some subdivision. It's pretty good. All right, I'm gonna save it before I lose all this. Save. All right, go back. Got our bat selected. Go back into edit mode. Now we want to pull out the arms at the shoulders. So it's pretty close to the neck here. And probably those would go like here. I think we need, if I can do an inset, probably like from these two. Let's see. I'm just looking at how it feeds in. That's probably the way to go there. Yeah. So just do those two, do an inset, and pull it out. Scale it. Put that up, and then we can insert like a extra ring here to make it fit. Just flatten it along the axis. So what we can do is insert an edge loop. Let's scale that. Pull it up. It's kind of creating the idea of the joint, but also sort of like a lat, I guess, so that we can then go and pull these. And pull them back some, and then round this out more. said, these two fingers that almost are right on top of each other, webbed together for the leading edge. So probably, let's rotate this. And scale it a little bit. Because what I'm thinking is we can pull this, each one of these fingers from one of these parts. Maybe not. Let's see how to think about it. So what we want is bone coming here, bone coming out from these, two bones coming out this way. So it's like I need to split this. I need to add geometry. So how do we do that? Do an inset. Select that, do this. Now we have kind of the beginning of some hands and a palm. So we can do the fingers and just turn it back. So we scale, like, the idea of like turning it back is something like that, where we scale it. So then these become our fingers, and this can become its own little joint. And this is the palm. So we have finger, finger. So we'll make this the lead finger. Get it lined up, rotated, flattened, and pull it. So what I'm doing is, this is the bone, this first lead one. It's really long, probably something like that. We'll break it up to make a joint here in a sec. It'll probably go back like that. And then the next one will be right behind it, right here. So that will be, right, we need a joint, we need a break here, so we'll do a lead, insert, right towards the end, and then pull that, like that. And then take this bone, let me think about this, move these two to make them forward more and increase the size of these. Hit our F to get it centered. Make the palm bigger. Yeah, that'll work. So then this will become our long lead bone. Just reshaping these bones to make them make sense. This will be bigger. Yeah. So this is then our lead bone coming from here. Extrude it. Pull it out. Look at the joint. So the joint comes out to the end right there. Yeah. So that'll be the first joint, and then we'll do another. Extrude. And that one is not very long. Like that. So that's the finger. So this is the first finger bone, that's the second, that's the third, and this is like a fingernail. That's 1, 2, yeah, they have 4. So actually this would be like the hand phalange. This is like the first finger bone. These are the knuckles. So hand, first knuckle, extrude, and then one more, extrude, something like that. We'll rotate it and scale it. Okay. Notice I'm not adding the extra geometry for the joints just yet. Sure, this one can come smaller too. Because they get thick. These bones will also probably bend, so there'll be some extra geometry in that, but I'm just drawing out the topology now. So now we've got these two fingers. Need one coming here and one coming back. So select, just hit F to zoom in. Yeah, these will be the two spots. So we can come up from here, move this, make it bigger. I'm just laying them out better. So one from here. Extrude. How does that one work? So it goes out a little bit, like that. And not that much maybe, or somewhere in between. And then same number of joints. So that's the hand bone. 1, 2. Just checking my count. It's hard to tell. They're almost like they're locked. They don't flex. I think that might be the case. So we'll hit extrude. Small. I'm going to go for 3 on this because it looks like, I just hit G again. Looks to me like they are sort of locked bones. They probably flex. I don't know. I can't imagine. It might be just that the webbing of the wing keeps them unflexed. All right, and then one more. Oops, wrong one. This one. Extrude. That one goes straight back. Move it up a little. Is it not? Should be, well, it is pretty long. Yeah, this trailing bone is longer than this one, I think, by a little bit. We will rotate, extrude again. Like I said, we can always position the joints later. And then one more. Oops. So we'll double select here. I'm going to move this bone up a little bit forward. This one, and then we'll turn on these just so I can get them all. So I think you're starting to see how it works now. And the question is, how do we do the webbing for the wings? We also still need to get the thumb off of the front, which is really pronounced. So to do that, we will insert another joint here. Or actually, I could just do an inset. Yeah, let's do that. And it comes off the bottom, so we're going to select this face. I'll turn off the... actually, let me rearrange this a little bit, just to make it bigger. That'll work. I'm going to inset, pull it out, scale it in, probably rearrange. Treat it more like a digit. And then just kind of points out in the front or off at an angle. It's pretty pronounced, you can see. This is the joint that they hang from or crawl with to move around, since they don't want to waste their chance of breaking their wings to get to be pulling around with them. So extrude. I'm going to pull it out for the entire length of the finger. Yeah, something like that. And then I will do it in the tip. Trying to do an inset. I might need to select again. W. And we can insert some edge loops for the one joints. Let's see. Yeah, it gets really narrow here. So scale it, curl it. We will reposition stuff a little bit. And we'll add another. Trying to think. Yeah, I think it'll be all right. We'll add a joint here because it's so pronounced. Double click, pull back. I think that's looking pretty good for now. I haven't added the claws because I don't really know exactly how I want to add them. I'm going to spread these points out so we don't get a big jumble of stuff here. Maybe that we want to get rid of some of these points here. So what we can do is select all three of those and just right click and then say merge vertices at center. So what does that do? That gives us a bunch of triangles, which we don't want, but we can select these edges and dissolve them. And now we're back to quads. And by doing that, I've eliminated a ton of topology that would be problematic for such a small bone. Speaking of which, yeah, it's all right. For such a small bone, you don't really need it since the detail's not there. And we've done a good job of spreading it out from down here. All right, I think that's probably a good place to stop for now. Objects, you can see. So you can see what goes on with the subdivision. It's interesting. It's almost like it's already started to web. When we go back to our subdivided mode, and the reason for this is because we don't have the joints that I added in the toes. So let's go back to edit mode, and all you have to do to fix that is just do insert, select it, pull it back up to here, same thing here, pull it to the edge, do one here, oops, add an extra line there, and then here. And what we'll do is we'll do the same thing we did in the feet. We'll just double click to select and scale them smaller along the plane that they're on. Spread them out a little bit this way. And the question becomes which plane to scale them on. Oh, you can also, that's a good, let me go back. This is a good point here. So like I said, this one's at an angle. So you get this idea of, okay, which plane to scale it on. What you can do to set that, right now we're at global on the gizmo. If you set it to normal, then you get the normal plane. Maybe not that one, let's see. Local. Anyway, you can adjust these to find it based on the view. So you notice the gizmo changes there. So if I get inside this and then scale, I'm actually scaling on the same plane. I can rotate. So hopefully that made sense. But the point is like you can use these the transform orientations just to modify the way the transform works. Yeah, this one needs to come. But because this one is sort of on one of the planes already, you can just use that, or you can go to, again, view. You just select, look at it, whoops, face long, and then scale along the plane that it was on. All right, so then by doing all that, let me change this back to global so I don't forget. By adding these joints, what we've done is, if we go back out to object mode, we've cleaned up so that we get the, we don't have the webbing that we had before. So again, but you can also see we're missing this, well, that bent bone's not that bad, but if we go back to edit, the reason is because we don't have a joint here. We've only got the one ring, so if we hit insert to make two, or to actually create the kind of joint we want, and this is one of those joints you are going to want to animate. We could probably insert one here, another ring for the, oops. And then one interior ring here to make it bigger. Oops. Thicken the joint a little bit. Sorry. Just flattening it out. Make it a little longer. Put an elbow on it. Then that way, this won't bend as much now. It won't curl like it did. So we go back to object mode. We get the bone structure that we want. Okay, so there's our bat without the wing, without the flaps. I'll save it, and we'll come back and deal with the creation of the actual wings in the next video, and also to maybe some UV mapping. So hopefully this is useful for you. If you have any questions, just post them in the comments.